Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill, a snowy mountain. You know the whole thing about rolling a snowball, it gets bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
A never-ending mountain and a never-ending snowball that was rolling forever down a hill. Could it ever be enough?
How do you gauge it?
Well, it's going to keep growing, isn't it?
Mm.
Obviously. If it looks back upon its life and says, "Whoa, I was so small in the past," you know? Yes, you were so small in the past. And now you're at a certain place, and in front of you is much bigger. And you're always going to keep getting bigger. It's always going to keep growing. Is it ever enough? Is what enough? Is it big enough right now? Is it bigger now? Is it big enough now and compared to where it's going to be in a year's time? Do you see the simile here, or no, you
Yeah.
don't? You do or you
No, I
don't?
do.
You sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Do you want to
Yes.
explain what you see then?
Well, it just is the size that it is now.
It is what it is, right?
And the past is the past.
The problem
and
is
it's
the
gonna keep going
identity.
forward.
The problem is the identification with it. If a snowball, by the way, you're the snowball. You're also the hill, okay?
Okay.
If you're rolling down a hill and where you are is where you are, and where you've been is where you've been, and where you're going to be is where you're going to be. And instead of looking at where you are and comparing it to where you're going to be, or comparing it to where you were, instead of doing that, you just look at where you're at now. Then you are where you are. And how big you are and how fast you're going is how big you are and how fast you're going now. You're a different size and you're going at a different speed to what you were in the past, obviously. And you're also now at a different size and speed to what you will be doing in the future, because you're a snowball rolling down a hill.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, if you're not just experiencing what it's like to roll down a hill, which, by the way, from the point of view of the snowball, is always the same size. You're always at the same size. You're always in the same place. You're always rolling down a hill. You're always getting bigger. Your only experience is to continue rolling down the hill, which is a process of evolution. You're always rolling. You're always experiencing the same thing, which is rolling and growing. So nothing actually changes. Your experience is exactly the same as it has been since you started rolling, and you've been rolling for as long as you can remember as consciousness. And you will continue to roll because it is the nature of consciousness to roll and grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're always doing the exact same thing you've always been doing. Since day one, nothing's changed. Okay. So is that enough? Is the process of rolling and growing enough? Are you okay with that? The problem is in identification. As identification with the current circumstances happens, along with that identification comes identification with the memory of where you used to be, and with that also a projection of where you think it's going. So is what you're experiencing now not enough compared to where you were, or what you imagine yourself that you could be doing? So you've generated a lack within your experience through identification, as opposed to being with the experience of being a snowball that is rolling down a hill, growing now, here. Is that enough? Is it enough for you to have this experience, to be here now with this experience as it's growing, as it's evolving, without putting so much emphasis on how it's going to be in the future and how you very quickly want to get to that point in the future because you see that as better than what you're doing now?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in the future, you're still going to be rolling down a hill. Any states you may attain to, any experiences you will attain to in the future are going to be temporary. You will pass through them as a snowball that is rolling down a hill, passes by lots of buildings and lots of people and lots of experiences, but it keeps on rolling. It can't stop. So the question of is it enough is always a question of identity. A lot of these questions boil down to the question of identity of the self, the so-called self. So let's keep going into it. There's many different ways to consider this problem. What is enough? What would be enough? What would be enough? That's a question you'll have to answer.
It's I
What
can't answer it
what
because
would
I've
be
never
enough?
defined it for myself.
So we feel insufficient. We feel like we are not enough right now. In comparison to what? Do you still have this feeling? Do you still encounter this feeling of not being enough? As you're asking this question throughout your days, do you still experience this feeling like you're under pressure, you're not enough, you're not doing enough?
Well, I've had this breakthrough this week where I'm being a lot more gentle with myself. I'm regularly stopping and just, I'm okay with this. This is enough for me. I'm happy with this. I'm happy where I am.
Are you happy with all of the insecurities, all of the wobbling, all of the confusing points of the brain, all of the past memories and traumas that it holds, and all of the hopes and dreams that it has? Are you okay with that? Is that enough? Is it enough as it is? Are you trying to get rid of some of it? Are you trying to hold on to some of it? Or is it just enough as it is? If we say to ourselves that our experience will be enough at some point when it gets to be a certain way, then we may and most likely will try to control our current circumstances and push them in a very, very specific direction. So we learn to never feel satisfied and never be enough until we hit the mark. And we may never hit the mark. That's one of the traps. The expectations that we have upon ourselves are potentially unreachable. Now, we can go into the specific. Okay, so there's so many things to cover here. I'll try to focus on one thing at a time. That may be the case. At the same time, though, you may place certain standard upon your experience, and then you may strive towards reaching that goal, and then you may reach that goal. Is that enough? Then what? It's enough when you get there. Then what? Are you happy with the fact that you reached enough? You reached that point of enough? Or do you find that even that wasn't really enough? You thought it was enough when you got there, and then it wasn't really enough, and you still have this feeling of not being enough. So what do you want to do? Try to approach the problem in the same way again. So you're now trying again. You just go down the same road thinking, okay, well, maybe this time I'll try it differently and I'll get to that point. And then you get there and it's still not enough. So what is enough is the question. What would that look like? Let's have a look at what is not enough. What is not enough here? The body. Let's avoid using some kind of comparison. Let's avoid comparing, putting an expectation on ourselves, whatever our self is. So many illusions in this. That's the thing. What is myself that is not enough? And what is not enough? To define what is not enough, we must define what is enough. If I describe this and if I break it down, it's going to be very direct, which is fine. Okay, we can do that. The present moment, which this body is a part of, and this psychology is a part of, is absolutely everywhere, all over the entire face of life. In all corners of creation, in all corners of the cosmos, absolutely everything is it, everywhere. What is not enough? The present moment in which you live, in which you are, is intimately one all over the face of reality, everywhere, loving itself, experiencing itself, and unfolding as an entire cosmos of life. What is not enough? It's not enough. Is it not enough to be that? To be this as it's unfolding, as it's having this experience, as life is happening right now in the present moment, right here within your own experience of life, which is obviously connected to every other thing everywhere. Is that not enough? Or are we talking about an identification with the body, which says, okay, the body is me, I am the body, I am the psychology, and I have been told, and I have come to believe that a human life, is all about aspiring towards success and having a bank account with a megaton of money in it and owning all these different kinds of properties. And when I look at myself, which I think is the body, me here, I don't have any of those things, and therefore I'm not enough. So I must strive to reach those goals. Okay, so your problem is identity. You have identified with the body, and you think the psychology is you, and that identification causes you to experience a kind of separateness, an apparent separateness from the rest of the cosmos. You are not living on the same page as life itself. Instead, you are living in an image of what you think your life, which you have said is this body and psychology, is supposed to look like, which was actually just put into you from when you were a baby. Okay, let's break it down in another way. Perhaps I can identify that okay, I'm going to speak as an individual here, because this is the only way you can ever experience feeling like you're not enough. You must identify as the individual for a start. So if I can identify that my psychology is operating differently to other people, and that I have experiences within myself that seem to be abnormal, that other people don't really understand. And within this current model of economy, there are all of these terms thrown around like mental health disorders and depression and anxiety and whatever, psychosis, whatever it may be, schizophrenia, all of these labels that society deems is abnormal and incorrect. And so if I can identify that they are happening within my consciousness and that they don't seem to be happening to other people, I might also think that I am not as good or not good enough to other people. And I'm comparing myself now to all of the people as if that's what my life is about. My life is about aspiring to the standard that society has imposed upon a human being, upon a human life. When I say society, that's us, obviously. We have done that as a collective species, but I'm trying to just think as the individual here, who probably wouldn't have that level of clarity. So let's get to reality. I am not an individual. My body is not separate from anything in this world. My body is intimately having this experience right now with the rest of life here on this planet. And this planet right now exists right in the middle of a process of universal evolution, as the solar system has been expanding and twisting and turning and growing along with the sun in its own process. This earth has been going through the same motions right next to the sun. The sun's been going for billions upon billions of years, and our solar system is part of an interconnected network within a galaxy, which has also been evolving for billions upon billions of years. And this body is one tiny little aspect of that whole process. And obviously it goes beyond the galaxies. There are multiple billions of galaxies in the observable universe alone, all of which have been evolving and unfolding at the exact same time. And this body and this psychology is one little finger in the body of that experience. In fact, it's not even a finger. It's a tiny little speck of dust that's stuck on the tip of the fingernail in terms of its size, you know. It's smaller than that even, but we're talking atomic, subatomic. It's a subatomic particle. This body is a subatomic particle in the world of reality, in the face of the whole range of existence as it's unfolding in the now. And what is not enough again? So you kill it straight away. Not enough. There's no such thing as not enough. Now, it's important to understand that this body, this life is unfolding. It's evolving in the now. It's changing. The circumstances of the matter, the body, the psychology, the relationships, the earth, the society, the whole universe, everything in it is twisting and changing. Now, if the universe was to take a photograph of itself, called memory, and remember how it used to be, and have a comparison of how it is now versus how it used to be, and have a preference over one of those, it might think that the version that we're doing now is not enough, because in the past it was much better. But that's just a photograph. There is no past universe. There is no past reality. There is only the present now unfolding everywhere. So in the brain of the individual, there are lots of photographs of different states and experiences. Some of them were really happy, much happier than the current state. And so if there's a preference to how it used to be in the memory, the current state might feel like it needs to get back to that memory. And so it has a comparison. Now it's trying to control the present moment. But that's only in the brain. And it's just a memory, it's a photograph. That's not even real. The content of the memory isn't real. And so one's experience becomes hyper fragmented, and the self tries to establish one's own experience of this present moment and push it towards how this memory was, trying to get back to some kind of positive state, which is unreachable. And also, even if you, for the most part, it's unreachable, you'll never get back to the same state. There's no possible way to go back in reality. There is no backwards in reality. It doesn't exist. But in memory, there is definitely a past in memory, in the brain. And so you may get back to a similar state, and then your brain will take a photograph of the present experience of happiness and compare it to the past one and say, okay, these were kind of similar. And now it feels like it's hit the mark, but you're not seeing the fact that it's temporary also. So as that begins to fade away, that happiness begins to fade inevitably, that emotion of happiness or the emotion of contentment begins to fade away. Now you're in the same situation again, feeling unhappy and feeling not enough. And so you set about on the same cycle, stuck in this cycle within the brain of forever trying to get back to these so-called past experiences. And your experience of life as the individual just gets stuck in a loop now. You're actually stuck in the past. You're living your life from the point of view of memory, and that memory only exists from the perspective of the individual. And so your experience of life is one that you think you're an individual. And so you live in a sense of separation, because you keep falling into the memory and believing that that's what you are, because you identify with the body. So the identification is the wrong. Identification is the error.